Well, hello and happy belated July 1st Canada Day. Happy belated 4th of July if you are celebrating that as well. And happy kind of what would be Stampede Week in Calgary if you were to celebrate that as well. But welcome to the Hockey Podcast. My name is Kevin Olenek. You can follow us on Twitter at podcast_hockey. Like us on Facebook, the Hockey Podcast, and subscribe, rate, join our on iTunes and Spotify as well. There's a lot of partying and activities going on in Calgary. Is there, Devin? Devin came back from camping to specifically join us for the podcast. That's so kind of you, Devin. How are you?
I'm very tired. We went to Kananaskis country and had a great time and literally just got back about half hour ago and sleep deprived, hungover. I'm gonna nap after this.
All right. Right. Well, I can understand that. Sean, how are you?
I'm pretty good. I think I'm finally recovered from the Pig and Duke on 12th's opening night, which was Friday on Canada Day. Actually, Heidi, Devin, and I all went there and helped them set things up because they've been shut for 5 months now because of some flooding and then the COVID. So it was great to be back at basically is like the second home for a lot of us here in Calgary.
There we go. Well, and Heidi, hello.
Hello. In the spirit of Stampede, I was very disappointed that Sean did not want to have pancakes for breakfast for the third day in a row.
Oh, jeez. Come on, Sean.
Got pancakes for the past 2 days, but no pancakes allowed, apparently.
Gee, Sean.
I know, because that's my favorite thing about Stampede is pancake breakfast. So,
yes.
You only have so much carbs.
Yes.
You need it when you're drinking, though. Come on.
I think that's why I survived Friday.
Where was the best pancake breakfast during the Stampede? Where was the one that you're like, okay, I have to go to this one?
The one in my neighborhood, actually. So the one is in the community center about 2 blocks away from my house because they had live music. They had, if you had kids, they had a bouncy castle, and they had, when you went, you didn't just get like 2 pancakes and that was it. You got pancakes and eggs and bacon and sausage and fruit, and they had coffee, and actually half decent coffee most of the time, and all kinds of stuff. So it was always a really good pancake breakfast, and I'd always run into people from my neighborhood there. So that would have been yesterday if the Stampede was still going on. So kind of sad about it.
What area was that?
That's the Glendale Community Center.
Okay.
Yeah. For anybody who's listening in Calgary.
Yeah, so there's no, I know there's no Stampede, but there's not going to be a lot of pancake breakfasts. I guess everyone's kind of like, I don't want to be near anybody than eating food kind of thing.
The Stampede organization is organizing a drive-through Stampede breakfasts.
Oh, okay.
So they're trying to do a little bit here and there. Like you can go and do drive-through, like food trucks for like food as well as mini donuts, because that's always a big draw for food-wise on the Stampede grounds. But for the most part, it's just and then there's the infamous Wild Horse Saloon is doing multiple tents instead of just one big cesspool of a tent. They're doing multiple tents for social distancing, trying to bring back some Stampede stuff for everyone. But yeah, we'll see how that all goes.
That's I mean, it's for those that don't live in Calgary, and I know there's some out here in Vancouver that just don't particularly have some issues with the Stampede, and I get it, but it is a big thing in Calgary, and it is sad that it's the celebration portion of it is not happening. I think is and it is part of the city's tradition, and it is sad. I mean, it would be like not going. Well, it's not even close. I was going to make a joke about going to celebrities during, but let's start there. It was a weird. It's weird. Everything is weird. No Stampede. July 1st was usually the time where teams spend way too much money on players that they shouldn't be signing for these amounts. And then we talk about buyouts. Cough, cough, Louis Eriksson. And then others, Troy Brouwer. The list goes on and on and on. But an Instagram video came out this week on July 1st, seeing Jake Virtanen at a nightclub here called Celebrities, a well-known nightclub, and it caused a fusses of fusses all across Canuck internet, so much so that the person that posted it actually locked it down, and I think she deactivated her account. I can't find her anymore for now. I don't know. Before we go into this, I want to find the actual photo of the rules of celebrities during COVID, because this was, I guess, the big controversy. Make sure that I have it here. Actually, I know who. Hang on one moment. I know who has it.
I got it, Kev.
Okay, thank you.
All attendance is reservation only. No walk-ins. There's
Are you cutting out there?
masks.
Oh, you have to try again. Sorry,
Start again?
Yeah.
All right. All attendance is reservation only. No walk-ins. There will be a maximum of 6 people per booking. Masks are encouraged. All guests will be stationed at their assigned tables. All guests must wash or sanitize their hands. Feet, and while seated, please do not mingle with other tables.
Okay.
So it's basically the same as any other sort of. It's not. Nightclubs aren't the nightclubs that people think of when you go there pre-COVID. There's no dancing and all that. So it's basically a restaurant now, a pub. And basically, from what I saw, is he was just there. Like, he's there just like I was at the Pig and Duke on Friday. Like, I think he didn't do anything wrong. The problem is he's Jake Virtanen, and he's had this issue in the past. And with everything going on, people are going to scrutinize and over-scrutinize players for doing that. And then if you throw in, like later on, and I think yesterday, on Friday, we found out that there was 4 players and 1 coach from the St. Louis Blues tested positive, and they believe they could have been exposed to it at a bar down there. So it's just, to me, it just comes down to, is it for someone who knows he's going back and he has to go into a bubble and everything, it's just, what is the risk worth it? If not, then he needs to rethink things. But what he did was nothing different than what a lot of people are doing, including myself, going out and enjoying a night out at an establishment that we haven't been able to do for those 3 months that everything was locked down.
So you mentioned if this was because this was Jake Virtanen. I mean, we also saw photos of other hockey players. You know, our first photo of Elias Pettersson in a while was a shot at net, was him playing hockey. And the number of things. So part of it is Virtanen's reputation, but the other side of this is Virtanen didn't post this on his Instagram. It was one of his friends that posted this on their Instagram and was caught wind of by other people. And then the media, the Twitter person tweeted out, then the media jumped in, and then there was a report that the Canucks had to have a conversation with him. Is this a Jake Virtanen thing, or is this like if any hockey player is going to be in a bar, kind of? Is there a panic thing here? What, Devin, Heidi? What do you think?
I think that it's a professionalism. It's showing that you're committed to play hockey and knowing what potentially could come in the next month. It just shows lack of respect, in my mind, to the organization and his other teammates, let alone the entire hockey league in general, because he'll be exposed to other players as well when they do the playing games. So it just has to do with professionalism and respect for his fellow competitors.
Yeah, and I'll echo what Devin said about that, like for sure, like the professionalism aspect of it too. And I don't think it's just the Jake Virtanen thing. It's any player I think that we would see out and about and going to bars and stuff. We wouldn't. I think that we'd be scrutinizing them as well. I know I wouldn't like to see probably any of the Flames players out and about on 17th. Like, even though like we are, but we're not professional hockey players. So, and there's just too many concerns and too much of a risk for them with their profession to be doing that. So, yeah, not just the Jake issue.
Sean,
like to pick. For me, I think it's fine. Like, as long as you aren't going out and doing anything that's against the rules and against regulations, I think that's fine. The issue is that Jake needs to understand that he has a reputation and he needs to find a way to fix it. If this was, say, Alex Edler or Chris Tanev, it wouldn't be as big a deal. There are going to still be people talking about it in the wrong, like in a negative tone, because there's people yelling at people for like us for going out. That's just the way it is right now. There are people who are still very scared about COVID-19 and the potential second wave of tested like numbers. And no matter what happens, you're going to get backlash if you're seen out and about as a hockey player right now, because the NHL and the Players Association are trying their best to find a way to make this work. And especially when you look at the just ballooning numbers down in the States, it's like they're public figures, so you have to they have to hold themselves at a higher standard for their behavior than just us general public. So I do think that we need to find he needs to hold himself at a higher standard and know that, and make sure that his friends also know that if they do go out, nothing goes on social media, nothing. Because that's the other problem. Is like he's very much a true blue millennial, where they just love to share everything on social media, even though you really shouldn't share everything on social media. Like he does there's some privacy, but if he's not, he's got people who don't respect that in his friends group, then he needs to figure that out as well.
To piggyback off that, another aspect to it is the fact, like, think about the fans. I live for hockey. I love hockey. And if, one player is going to kind of ruin that by potentially getting COVID and then, pass it on to an entire team possibly, or let's say 8 players, then, you know what, it makes me upset because I miss hockey. I want it back, along with millions of other people. So I think there's that aspect as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that. I get that. And I think there's so much anxiety and frustration with every step that is being taken. I mean, the other side of this, and it was mentioned, I mean, just for Virtanen, I mean, this is a valid criticism. Bo Horvat just had a baby. There are players on the Canucks that are asymptomatic. If going out when you're about to go in to some sort of Hubble/quarantine does seem a little bit irresponsible to do. But like, yeah, so I get that. And I just think that it's so much anxiety and there's so much stress. And, I mean, we're looking at Major League Baseball right now. Some people are absolutely not like where are the Toronto Blue Jays going to play? How is that going to work? Kind of thing. And there's this public perception about all the leagues. How's the NBA going to work when they're in one of the epicenters of this massive spike that you're seeing in Florida? How, the CFL, how are they going to get going? Like, it's just, I think there's so much stress. Even if these work there, I mean, there's a lot of concern of how this is going to work. And I think hockey players have to be careful for that reason. And I think the fans, I think the thing that kind of was a bit annoying to me was sort of the fan, like, I mean, we get this all the time, but how do I word this? The fans that were like, this is no big deal, while I understand, like, their point, like, other people are going out and all of that sort of stuff, I kind of get it. But at the same time, this, like, there is some real legitimate stress if this is going to work. And I'm one that believes that this can work if we put in, and clearly if you put in precautions. It seems to me, like, from what I'm seeing, that the places that have precautions and are being careful and are using their brains are taking steps in the right direction. But that doesn't mean that takes away any anxiety or stress. So that was the part that I think is a little frustrating, is to me, it was sort of like the pile on of someone having a legitimate concern about what this player is doing. And her point was not really even about Jake Virtanen. Her point was, how are you going to have 1,000 hockey players stuck in a bubble, and you actually think that they're all going to stick in a bubble? That was her legitimate point of the tweet. And it just went shockingly sideways. Well, not shockingly. Shockingly in air quote, shockingly sideways.
Yeah, you need for this to work, you need buy-in from every single person in that bubble. Players, staff, coaches, they cannot be trying to sneak out. And they need to be looking at how they can get into the bubble and be healthy for this to work. So I do think that he didn't do anything technically wrong, but it was still not the right choice for him.
Yeah. And
he needs to be better. But it's just, again, I think if it was any other player, it wouldn't have been as big a deal. But because he has had he's had the reputation in the past of not taking things too seriously enough, that it did get elevated a little bit more.
I see your point in one sense, but in the other sense, I'm thinking of someone like Pettersson or Markstrom, that a player that was in Sweden that didn't have any lockdown, and then if you saw them at celebrities posted on Instagram, I do think that would have created a bit of a panic as well.
It's just the way it is right now, though, right?
Yeah.
No, like Pettersson and Markstrom, they were in Sweden where there was no lockdown. They were out playing golf. They were out hanging out with their friends. There was no quarantine at all for them while they were out there. and we never saw anything because these guys were like Markstrom was hanging out with Elias Lindholm of the Flames, and Heidi follows Elias Lindholm on Instagram and saw lots of pictures of them out in a small little fishing boat right with each other. Like that, it's just the way it is. And like I think it did take. I do think it did get elevated because it was Jake Virtanen. Plus, those guys that you mentioned are still actually in a bit of a quarantine right now because they just came back from Sweden.
Right. Yeah.
I think another aspect is also, the people who are in North America, they did have a quarantine, and so they didn't get the access and like the availability to go out and do those things. And so people are itching to get out and back to some sort of normalcy too. So, he did what he did was wrong, but from a human aspect, it does make sense. But on the other hand, you got to be more mature. You got to show professionalism.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's what it is. It's professionalism is the right term there, Dev, because he needs to take things seriously. I think that was part of the message that Travis Green was trying to instill in him way back in 8 years ago at training camp when he was put in with the last group with a bunch of AHL players and junior players that weren't even going to make the team. He wanted him to be held accountable because he showed up and didn't meet the training and the fitness standards that they had put in front of him for the summer.
Well, and I mean, we'll get into this when training camp starts, but I will say this: if Jake Virtanen does not any Canuck does not get into shape in particular. But if Jake Virtanen does not get into shape here and does not come into camp in good shape after Travis Green has reportedly lost 16 pounds, and I don't think that's going to go over very well. And especially with him doing this. So I think he needs to, this is the time that he needs to be taking very seriously.
Yeah.
Yep. Just quickly, we'll get into the hub cities, and then we'll talk quickly about Ryan Kesler. We're still awaiting official word. I'm using air quotes, but it looks like from all accounts, Edmonton and Toronto will be the hub cities. It looks like the conference finals and the Stanley Cup final will be in Edmonton. And we're just waiting for a player vote and a ratification on some CBA things. There's a lot of technical stuff in there. Is there anything on that we need to really talk about? I feel like there's nothing really new. We're just waiting for the vote. But is there anything you guys are noticing or?
Well, I think the one big one is going to be a flat cap for the next 2-3 years. I think like you go back 6 months and we were talking, like you would talk to anyone trying to project out rosters and everything for the Canucks specifically, but all teams. You were expecting with the new US TV deal coming in a year or two. You were expecting a big jump in the cap, and it was going to be something that was going to relieve a lot of pressure on the Canucks and the Flames as well, because they're both in sort of cap crunches in different ways. But now you're not going to get that. So whether or not, and so we haven't seen whether or not they're going to have any sort of cap relief with contracts or anything like that, like a compliance buyout or something else like that. But I do, it's going to be very interesting to see what happens going forward with a flat cap for the next 2-3 years, because we already have parity, and you're going to have teams like Ottawa being able to snatch up decent players and picks and prospects just to take off, just for teams to lose cap that they need to lose to stay compliant or help build their team and sign the players they need to sign. Because you look at the Canucks, if at $81.5 million, if that's the cap, then it's going to be tough to keep this team together, and we don't even know how good this team is. If it's even like a team that can go deep in this playoffs. So it's going to throw an absolute wrench into a lot of teams' plans.
Yeah, that's
especially Toronto.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, Toronto too. Like teams that are right up against the cap are going to be fighting tooth and nail to try and stay under and keep as many good players as possible.
Totally. Yeah, it would be really interesting to see how GMs and management are going to kind of navigate this. That's for sure. But as far as the hub cities go, it makes sense to come to Canada. Like Sean was saying earlier, the inflated numbers in the States is astronomical right now. It's ridiculous. So to me, it makes total sense to be completely in Canada, and the U.S. the NHL will save money as well with the Canadian dollar the way it is too. So I was a little surprised to hear the potential for the finals being in just Edmonton, the conference and NHL finals. So I was expecting it to be in Toronto, and that was kind of my big surprise.
Actually, and Devin's big surprise was actually mine too. Was about the whole, because I thought for sure they'd be in Toronto as well, just with I don't know, the time zones and all that kind of. Because I mean, if you're gonna, I'll be playing games a little bit earlier on in the day, so that to account for like the time difference and stuff like that. So, but if they want to have them in Edmonton, then sure.
I think it's just it came down to pure numbers, as well as the how tight that bubble can be at that point. And as good as the Toronto bid is now with the CNE grounds involved, the bubble in Edmonton is a lot tighter because they've got hotels and practice rinks and everything right there. Well, I don't think it's a little more spread out in Toronto, and I think that was probably the biggest thing that changed it from Toronto to Edmonton.
And also, I mean,
in my opinion,
yeah, I also wonder if it is in part because there is a possibility the Blue Jays could be playing playoff baseball around conference time, that you just maybe want to limit the amount of people there. I'm not saying that Toronto Blue Jays are going to be playing Major League Baseball playoffs, but they have that possibility there, so that might be the other thing too. But I was thinking Toronto because as well, but I see the Edmonton point there. I guess the other thing I forgot, but it looks like the NHL players, if negotiations go well with the IHF, IOC, 2022 and the 2026 Olympics will have NHL participation.
That's going to be fantastic. Yeah. We need that back. That would be huge.
Yeah, I missed that.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, Crosby and McDavid need to play for this generation. That I think we all would agree. We need to see that at least one more time. But, Ryan Kesler got himself into Twitter battles because he made the joke on Twitter, please be Toronto. And Edmonton, some Edmonton fans were a little unhappy. It led to the debate on the goal that he scored for Anaheim against the Oilers back in that playoff series. But yes, Kesler trolling the Oiler fans.
What do you expect from him? He loves to talk. He loves to stir the pot, and he loves to make people angry at him. That's how he played the game, and that's just the person he is. If you watch the after hours, the online after hours that Scott Oak and Louis DeBrusque did, their last one, and they interviewed Kevin Bieksa, they talked about the start of their podcast, and Bieksa literally just told Kesler to be himself. You're a prick, but people will like you because you're a prick. So, and I think he's started to embrace that again, and people are going to get on him, and they're not going to like him if they were Canucks or Ducks fans, but that's fine. That's who he was. Like, dude, like Canucks fans still hate Mark Messier. Like, there's a lot of people who still hate Todd Bertuzzi. Like, Esa Tikkanen, Ray Ferraro. Like, it's that attitude that makes it entertaining. Like, for me, I'm fine with it. Like, just keep going. Plus, it's the Oilers fans, so piss them off all you want.
Yeah, I'm all for him just chirping Oilers fans. That's perfectly fine with me.
Yeah. We need to come up with an all-villain team one soon.
That'd be great.
Yes. Yeah. And by the way, just on a side note, just so that was a goal. Like, as much as Oiler fans were angry, that Kesler goal was a goal. They did make the right call there. If you went back to it was 2015. Yes, it was 2015. I remember. Yes, it was 2015. That goal that everyone was angry about, that was a goal. They did make the right call there. I said it back then, and I still stand by it. So there. Anyway. And he made the point on Twitter. Anyway, now I'm just rambling. Now getting into sort of as we prepare to get into the play-ins, that the camp is expected to start on the 13th. I'm going to predict it might start around closer to the 15th, but who knows? But we're getting close is the point. And now that we're getting into the play-in mode, and now that we're getting closer to having these matchups, there will be the opportunity to actually, Devin, to talk some hockey. But I think at the end of this, there's going to be an evaluation, like there always is at the end of the year. And I interviewed Pat Steinberg on Thursday from Fan 960, and we talked a lot about the Flames. You can listen to that. And specifically with the Flames, this year was a fascinating year coming in, because it was all about what we were expecting from the core, from the Monahans, the Goodrows, those guys that have not necessarily been the playoff people that we've expected them to be. And then it moved on to, there's been a bunch of turmoil, of course. We had the Bill Peters, Jeff Ward situation. We had TJ Brody. We had the Matthew Tkachuk versus Zach Kassian. We had David Rittich flipping a stick. Just so much happened. But now that we're 5 months in, Pat made an interesting point. I do think it relates to all of the teams that we follow here, including the Leafs even, Devin. So I'm going to play a little bit what Pat had to say. We'll talk about it.
The season was going to go had there not been a 5-month pause when it's all said and done. So it's weird, and it's almost like, I believe, and others might look at it differently. I'd be curious the way you look at it too. Like, I believe going into this year, I was using this season and specifically what they did in the playoffs as a big-time litmus test and a big-time kind of evaluation of this core group of players. Like, if this team were to, A, miss the playoffs, or B, have another disappointing performance in the playoffs, and the key players that had been under the microscope were disappointing once again, well, maybe it is time to go in a different direction. Maybe it is time for Brad Treliving to start looking at different ways or a different core to build around. But now that there's been this 5-month pause, I don't know. I really don't. I don't know how to look at that anymore. I almost wonder if that conversation needs to be put on pause. You know what I'm saying? Like, I almost wonder if you have to say, well, this is the craziest year that we've ever seen in the NHL. Maybe having this referendum on the core group of players, that's not the best time to do it anymore.
So yeah, basically, maybe we'll start with Devin and Heidi from a Flames perspective. What do you think? Is this the year, if the Flames bow out to the Jets in the play-ins, do you still look at this core and you still need the evaluation, or is this you look at it, there's the 5-month layoff, and we need to wait?
I think we have to take into account that with the layoff there, and I like before all this, I absolutely agree with the whole. This was going to be a year of really evaluating some of these players and seeing where they were going, and I think most fans would have agreed with that. But I don't think we can really count what's going to go on after it comes back as anything like substantial, because we have guys are not going to be in perfect shape. It's chemistry is going to be off. I can't see it as being a real way, which is too bad, because I think we did need that kind of test to see where we're going to go into the future. But it's just you can't do that this year. It's just been too much of a weird year for the Flames team.
Yeah, I agree. I think it will get postponed. I think this will give time to the players like the Monahans and Gaudreaus to prove that they are playoff players and that can actually rise up to the occasion when the going gets tough. And but knowing Brad Treliving, he always has something up his sleeve, or it seems like it at least, and he always seems to be in all these different trades. Logically, I think that giving them the COVID year, the rest of this year, and next year to kind of prove themselves would make most sense. But once again, Brad seems to always have something up his sleeve. So I'm really interested to see what he does potentially in this offseason. Because even during the year, I didn't see any flair, the same flair that I've seen Gaudreau have in the past couple of years. And that's been one of my big things towards him. And, once again, Monahan, I don't think he's a number one center. And so going forward, you could put Lindholm in center, and he is a good 1B center in the NHL in my mind. So I could definitely see that if Brad really wanted to, he could make something happen.
And I think that's the thing with any team now. These bubble teams aren't going to tear it down, I don't think. I think they're going to, if there's anything, there's going to be retooling moves. And I think there's going to be some big blockbuster trades in the fall between or whenever the off season is. Because I think there's going to be teams that are going, you know what? It's not time to tear down because we don't know what we got, because this is such a weird such a weird season. But there are going to be teams, because of the cap implications of a flat cap, that I think we're going to see some big we could see some big blockbuster trades just as a quote unquote retool or a restructuring of the cap for certain teams. So with the Flames trying to move, maybe it is a Johnny Gaudreau that they move out, or a Sean Monahan or whatever, because I think they need to rethink on what their blue line looks like. With the Canucks, they've got a lot of potential UFAs that need to and RFAs that they need to take care of. Markstrom, Toffoli, Tanev on the UFA side, and on the restricted side, they've got Gaudette, Stetcher, and Virtanen, amongst others that they need to figure out what they're going to do with. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens. And I think you're also going to see teams try. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a lot of rookies next year, because teams are going to need those cheap ELC contracts. I think we're also going to see a lot of sort of middle six, third line, fourth line players go to Europe because there's not going to be room for them, or taking 1-year deals. Even some of the bigger names, I think we're going to see take 1-year deals, because they're like, let's again, Sorry, Dev, we're gonna go to the Canucks here with Tyler Toffoli, but he came in, he ripped it up for a handful of games with the Canucks, and is there going to be a feeling of potential what if I have a full good season? What can I do? Can he bet on himself and build a case for a bigger contract next off season?
Well, even Travis Hamonic, Pat and I talked about him as well. Travis Hamonic, from a Flames perspective, it's the same idea. Like, what do you? I mean, he thought he was ripping it up or anything like that, but he's a guy. He's a UFA. I mean, would he just take? There may be. I see what Sean's saying. I think there'll be a lot of players just taking a 1-year deal and just saying this is what I'll do this for now, and we'll see what happens next year.
TJ Brody, Tyson Barrie on that list too. So yeah, it'll be that's a great point. You kind of caught me off guard there. I'd like the player's perspective. Now with this new generation of being more of a contract player, as in not so much a team oriented person, but more worried about themselves. Yeah, you're going to have those players that are going to bet on themselves for sure. I can see that happening.
Well, it's not even bet on themselves. Again, it's about it's partly that, but it's also what do we have here? Like, can we all buy into taking a little bit less for 1 year and see what we have as part of the team? Because that's another thing, another way to look at it. Like someone like a Chris Tanev, like I'm sure he wants something long term, but do they have a team that can take that next step? And do they need just 1 year to figure out some of the salary cap kinks before they sign him again long term? Or do they go long term with him or all that? Like, and then even the older restricted free agents like Adam Gaudette and Jake Virtanen, do they try and sign a 3-4 year contracts and walk themselves to UFA, or do they try and go 1 year again? It's going to be very interesting. This offseason is going to be short and it's going to be jam packed with news.
Yeah. You're
going to have trades, you're going to have signings, they're going to have the draft there. Like it's going to be it's just going to be every day you're going to have news, I think, and it's going to be fun. But we're going to see very different teams start of the 2021 season, I think.
Well, even the restricted free agent, yeah, you talked about that a little bit. The one thing that I wonder, and I think for the Flames, Canucks, and even Leafs, and for all of these teams, I think that you can, if you lose, and you lose depending on the situation, how you lose, and I do think that will have some sort of play in that. You may underevaluate your team and to make a decision, but I think that there's a potential where you almost hear, if you go far in these playoffs, you might be over-evaluating your team, if that makes sense. I think that where the management is going to have to find out, is this like a run or is this building something? And that, I think, is the other fascinating thing about this. Because as much as there's going to be chaos, and we love chaos, I wonder if patience is going to win the day over. And just say, okay, I think we need to be a little bit, okay, there is a move here, but maybe is it not panic, not have to make a drastic move on one end, go back to that 2015 Oilers team where they kind of felt that they were on their way and they didn't do a heck of a lot in that off season to build. I can see this is an opportunity where you can either over or under evaluate where your team is at, which can cost you going forward.
Totally. You have when you talk about that, I think about the New York Rangers. I think about the teams that weren't in the playoffs and they could just get hot and go. And that could actually really set back their rebuild or retooling years if they think they're that good and that close to doing it. You got to have a long memory and thinking about how they did before COVID and the year before that too. But you have also Montreal as well in that kind of mix, and whether or not the GMs of those teams, the Mark Bergevins of the world, who are potentially might not have a job next year, I guess the year after. Are they going to do a knee-jerk reaction? I think that's a great point, Kev.
But what's going to be interesting is I think that flat cap is going to force some. Depends on the team. Like I think with the Rangers and Canadians, they have the cap space that they could make. Like, they could make big deals. Mm-hmm. And then if it's the Leafs or the Canucks, where they're right up against the cap, do they have the means to even keep players? And they're going to have to make deals to keep players or to get value back for them. It's the flat cap is going to force a lot of decisions, and I think
totally.
And that's why I think it doesn't matter what you do in this. You're going to have to make big decisions going forwards. If you're a team like Devin said, the Habs or the Rangers, and you get hot and you go on a run, like I think you have to build on that. Like and you've got the draft capital, you've got the prospect capital, and you've got the cap space to make a deal. If you're the Flames or the Canucks or the Leafs, where you don't have that cap space, and you go on a run, and players like that need new contracts. Tyson Barrie, Travis Dermott, a TJ Brody, a Mark Jankowski, they overperform and they ask for more money. You're going to have to make a decision on them.
I think that decision would be made pretty easily because of the flat cap, right?
Yeah, or you're going to have to make a decision on them or someone else. Like, do we move someone else to keep him, or do we just move on from him? Like, that's why the offseason is going to be an absolute circus.
That another team, just to throw the Jets in there too, because they won't have Bufflin on their cap anymore. They're going to have $8 million, and that management and the ownership group doesn't really like paying players really, or hasn't shown that in the past, But you're going to have that. You're going to have that opening there to maybe solidify your blue line a little bit. So I just thought I'd throw the Jets in there too.
We could go through all 31 teams, and you could come up with what they can and can't do based off of how they do in the playoffs. It's not like normal off seasons where it's like, oh, the cap's going up this much, they're going to have to let go of one player and then they can sign this person. There's no cap increase, so you're going to have to make decisions. The biggest one in Canucks is Jake Virtanen. The two biggest ones in Canucks is Jake Virtanen and the choice between Troy Stecher and Chris Tanev, because you're not going to be able to keep all three of those players. You're going to have to make a decision on at least Tanev and Stecher, and also depends on how if you're keeping Toffoli, and it's going to be just crazy. And on the Flames side, you've got Hamnick, Brody, you've got Rasmus Anderson's got his contract kicking in this next year. So, and their blue line has left. It hasn't really shown well this past year. So they've got to solidify that, and they've got so much locked up front. If you look at their situation, they've got 6 or 7 players completely locked up long term up front, and they've got Andrew Mangiapane who deserves a big time raise coming up this offseason. So, and the actual cap relief on a Milan Lucic buyout is not that much for this upcoming season. I think he gets like they save maybe 500,000. They save a lot the next season, but not this one, upcoming one.
Yeah. I would suspect Lucic should be back with the Flames for the 21-22 season. I'm trying to word which season. That's so weird. But what I guess with goaltending on both sides here, well, like the Canucks still, Markstrom, I still think is a decision he has to think about for sure. And I still think this is a really important playoff for David Rittich one way or the other. And Pat and I talked about that a little bit as well. And I'll throw this out maybe to Devin and Heidi. This is an idea that I came up with. And we'll get Sean's opinion on Markstrom too. But even if Rittich wins game 1, I'm open to the idea of throwing in Talbot game 2. Or if you're throwing in Talbot game 1 and he wins, I'm open to the idea of playing both goaltenders in the first 2 games.
Yeah, me too. I think they're both they both have that potential. I don't think either of them are a shoo-in to be a playoff goalie. So yeah, for sure, I would for sure entertain that idea. Maybe unless they has had such a stellar performance at game 1, maybe I feel a little hesitant, but I think just in theory, just thinking about it, I think it's a great idea. The only thing is I could see Rittich, if he had a very good game that first game, I could see him not being very happy about getting pulled. But that's just his personality, and I'm sure that has not changed in these 5 months.
Totally. You'd have to have that conversation beforehand with both goalies and let them know that that's going to happen. Otherwise, you're totally messing up their mental makeup. And but yeah, I'd like it. As far as the tandems go of the 1A, 1B around the NHL, whether it's Calgary or Carolina, you do need to get both goalies going just in case one falters, because if you ride the hot goalie, which could be very beneficial for you, then you go to a goalie who hasn't played any sort of NHL hockey. It's going to be difficult.
To me, this is the play-in, play-off that you will need both goaltenders. Even if you have a workhorse like a Markstrom or an Anderson or a Carey Price, you are going to need that other guy to be at least either A, prepared, or B, he's going to have to play some games.
They're going to get, I think, one preseason game, one exhibition game before this all starts. And I think you're going to see a lot. There's not going to be much in terms of Travis Green will bag skate the Canucks first day back. That's what he does. But after that, it's going to be all scrimmages. And you're going to have to rely on your goalie coach. So for the Canucks, that's Ian Clark. For the Flames, that's Jordan Sigalet. And you're going to have to rely on them to let Travis Green and Ward need to rely on them and let them know who's on. Especially Jordan Sigalet needs to make sure he knows who's on. To go back to the Kevin Woodley interview that we had, he said this. It was, are you going to have first half David Rittich, or are you going to have second half Cam Talbot? Depending on who you have is who you're going to start, and you're going to ride that hot hand. So you can say that, yeah, we're going to start Rittich in game 1 and Talbot game 2. But if Rittich stands on his head and basically shuts the door, you're not taking him out. There is no way you're taking him out to do that, to throw in Cam Talbot. You are riding the hot hand because it's a 5-game series. And if you lose both games, the first 2 games,
you're done.
Yeah, it's very tough.
It's going to be tough.
Very, very tough. So it's, you gotta ride who's hot, and if you go through your scrimmages and you play pretty much 90% effort on your scrimmages, and you see who's seeing the puck well and who's feeling the rhythm properly, you stick with him. With the Canucks, it's going to be Markstrom, but like there's no another like as good as Demko can be. Markstrom's your bona fide number one. It's same with Winnipeg. They've got Connor Hellebuyck. They're not going to go to is it Laurent Brossoit that's their backup? I don't know.
Yeah, it's Brossoit their back. I'm not saying that you're. What my point though is I'm not saying that you're even with the workhorse you're not splitting time, but especially if you're in play-ins, you're doing 5 rounds. And there probably will be some back-to-backs here that I do think that there's going to be spots where you, even like a triple overtime game and back-to-back, I don't know if you're putting your goaltender back in. I mean, it's that's where I do see some that relationship being that Kevin Woodley talked about being important. So I do see the possibility of backup goaltenders playing a little bit more than they usually do in the playoffs. I'm not saying it's going to be a Markstrom Demko split, but I wouldn't be surprised if Demko plays.
I think it depends on how far you go and the situation. Yeah. The other thing is, I think if you have a triple overtime game and you're scheduled to play the next night in this situation, I think the NHL is going to have some sort of contingency plan or rescheduling things because they want to put the best product out there. They do not want to put these players out there and putting them in a chance to hurt themselves by playing 6 periods on a Saturday and then having to start another game at mid afternoon on Sunday. They're not going to do that. They'll delay that next game so that they don't put these players in a potential situation where they're going to hurt themselves, and the game is not going to be as good as it should be. Yeah.
No, I understand, but and we still don't know how that schedule is going to look. That's one of the other questions. But just to me, I think, there's going to be a number of different ways that this will be looked at. To me, that's the preparation to this, as long as this has been, it feels like this is like a U.S. College Pro Bowl or U.S. College Bowl national championship, the amount of time that they have to prepare for this on so many levels. Who comes out of that is going to be absolutely fascinating on that. And so we will keep our eye on that. So because next week we should be at some point being prepared to having actual training camps, touching wood. Yes, I'm touching my head, but hopefully we are there, almost there soon. So a few things that happened on the podcast. We mentioned the Kevin Woodley interview. You can check that out. Sean and I interviewed Kevin Woodley. We talked about goaltending. I had a chance to interview Pat Steinberg. We did a deep dive into the Flames. We also talked a little bit about what it was like to work at a sports radio station with Anoga Sports. What the hell do you talk about? We talked about that. I also talked with Paul Figler from the Dub Network. They relaunched this week. They relaunched on July 1st. They are looking for writers for if you're interested in that, if you want to cover some teams and see what that is like. You don't necessarily have to be in the city that you are covering. So there's some interesting opportunities there. We will be talking, I need to schedule the interview. We will be talking about the BCHL as well. They are also looking for writers as well, if you're interested in that. So check that out on the podcast. Is there anything else that we've got coming up?
We were hoping to run our Canadian draft this week, but we had some of our folk here, Tyler and Chris, not being able to make it. So we postponed that because we want everyone here for it, but we will do it, and we'll see how that goes, and we'll see if Kevin picks Connor McDavid first overall.
Wait, am I picking? I'm not picking first, am I?
That's not fair.
I think he's doing it just to troll me. I think this is like the ultimate troll job to see who I pick first.
And now who's going to be choosing the draft order, right?
I think we just draft out of a hat or out of something that
we'll do a random number draw for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
We'll figure
not by Kevin or Sean.
Yeah, no, I'm not. Hey, I'm not doing. Yeah, no, I'm not. I'm not.
Placeholder team B will pick first overall.
Yes. Yes. A placeholder team is picking first. Here we go. Yeah, so we got that coming up. And how do we follow everyone?
I am Beardy Canuck 03 on Twitter.
I'm at Heidi Mazeballs on Twitter and Instagram and everywhere else.
I'm Gordhouse09 on Twitter.
And Tyler is T Noble on Twitter. Schneid's SCHNIDZ. And I am KEVOLE. And we will talk to you all very soon. Bye for now.